This is Northern Light for Thursday, July 30th. Good morning. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Farmers in multiple North Country counties who were impacted by spring freeze events may be eligible for federal emergency loans.
Getting that capital and getting some break could be really helpful.
Also on the show, we're going back in time to learn about the creative ways that one kid from Ticonderoga used to make his own money.
If there was a way to make money legally, morally, whatever, we did it. If there wasn't a way, we invented one.
And our North Country at Work coordinator, Ana Williams-Bergen, is in the studio to give us a peek behind the curtain at how the series gets made.
All that's coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us. Support for Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio comes from CCOM Credit Union, home of the Moola Moola Kids account and Spin the Wave, helping children get started saving. Details at ccom.org, NCUA. And from Zach Hoyt Banjos, etc. in Piercefield, offering handcrafted and custom banjos, guitars, fiddles, and mandolins. More at hoytbanjos.com. This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. 3 former employees of the Plattsburgh YMCA's daycare have pleaded not guilty to charges stemming from a child abuse investigation there. As Kara Chapman reports, the cases are moving forward as the Y rebrands the center and taps new leadership.
21-year-old Dylan Bronson, 40-year-old Amanda Rizzo, and 28-year-old Autumn Stone, all of Plattsburgh, are former teachers at the Bright Beginnings Child Care Center. Each faces multiple counts of child endangerment and failure to report child abuse. Bronson is also accused of misdemeanor assault. The investigation that led to their arrest began back in March when the state suspended Bright Beginnings' license after complaints of physical abuse and inappropriate discipline by staff were substantiated. State police say multiple children between the ages of 1 and 2 were physically abused at the center between January and March, and that employees knew about the abuse and failed to report it. Each defendant appeared in Plattsburgh Town Court this month and pleaded not guilty to their charges. Rizzo is scheduled to reappear in court next Tuesday. Stone and Bronson are due back on August 18th. Bright Beginnings was temporarily shut down, and several employees were fired after the abuse allegations came to light. That included members of the Y's leadership team and the center's director. This week, the YMCA board announced a replacement and a new name for the center, which reopened in May to previous enrollees who needed childcare. North Country native Jacqueline Kemp has been tapped as the executive director of what's now the Y's Early Childhood Development Center. According to a press release, her background includes more than 2 decades of experience in early childhood education, child development, and leadership at programs in California and Utah. The board said in a statement that Kemp's appointment marks a new chapter for the center. The board said the Y, quote, continues its commitment to providing quality early childhood education and supporting children and families throughout the North Country. Kara Chapman, North Country Public Radio.
New York has secured a disaster designation from the U.S. Department of Agriculture after a spring freeze devastated many farms across the state. Kimberly Izar with the New York Public News Network has more.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul announced on Saturday that the state has secured a federal disaster declaration for 32 counties across the state. The declaration comes after a series of extreme weather events this spring, including an overnight frost in April that left some farmers with a near total crop loss. Ulster County Executive Jen Metzger, whose county is the second largest apple producer in New York State, said orchard farms and vineyards were hit especially hard.
These are mostly family farms. It's really tough on them. So getting that capital and getting some break could be really helpful.
Metzger says she anticipates climate change could increase the number of disaster designations farmers may see in the future.
I've been really trying to get the message out there because, of course, our federal government is taking us backwards on climate. But, if we don't stay on track to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, we can expect even more extremes.
Farmers can contact their local USDA Farm Service agency on how to apply for a loan. In Liberty, I'm Kimberly Izar for the New York Public News Network.
Agricultural producers in several North Country counties are eligible to apply for emergency loans from the USDA due to losses tied to the spring frost and freeze events. The disaster declaration covers Washington, Warren, Essex, Franklin, Hamilton, Herkimer, Jefferson, St. Lawrence, and Lewis counties. Farmers in Jefferson and Lewis counties can also get assistance if they were impacted by high winds and hail in mid-May. The emergency loans can be used to replace essential items like equipment or livestock, reorganize a farming operation, or refinance certain debts. The deadline to apply is March 23rd, 2027. You can learn more by going to farmers.gov or contacting your local USDA service center.
A major housing development has been proposed on land in Lake George that currently houses a historic amusement park. The property is home to the 61-acre Expedition Park, formerly known as Magic Forest. According to the Glens Falls Post-Star, the proposed development would include 2 3-story apartment buildings, 40 multifamily units, 100 senior dwelling units. There are also plans for self-storage units and a mixed-use commercial and residential building. The development will go before the Lake George Planning Board on August 11th. The paper reports the proposal is expected to undergo a lengthy review process.
And a runner from Lake Placid took home the women's title in the Last Man Standing ultra-endurance race at Mount Van Hovenberg over the weekend. The Adirondack Daily Enterprise is reporting that Joni Gherkin was runner-up in last year's competition. She clinched first place this year with 25 laps over 25 hours, more than 104 miles. Kyle Hunter of San Diego was the overall winner with 33 laps over 33 hours. His total came to more than 137 miles. The race was a test of both endurance and willpower. Runners had to complete a 4.2-mile loop each hour until just one person remained.
Budget cuts have sharply reduced the Pentagon's efforts to find the remains of thousands of troops still missing from long-ago wars. And the impact is hitting one group of families especially hard. Jay Price reports for the American Homefront Project.
Raymond Echeverria Jr. of Roxborough, North Carolina, was 4 years old in 1966 when his father was reported missing. Raymond Sr., a Fort Bragg Green Beret, was part of a small reconnaissance team that had come under heavy fire in Laos. Family members hold out hope his remains can be recovered, but it gets harder as the Vietnam War slips further into history.
Some of the veterans that were there are dying off. You've got issues with bodies being there for 50, 60 years. You've got acidity issues in the soil. Time is passing, and they don't seem to be getting any closer to finding answers for a lot of Southeast Asia families.
The U.S. government's efforts to bring MIAs home sprang from a grassroots movement in the 1960s. More than 3,800 troops have been recovered, about 1,000 of those from the Vietnam War. But federal budget cuts this year would slash by more than 2/3 the number of recovery missions in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. That's according to the Pentagon office responsible for the work, the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, or DPAA. Many of the more than 1,500 still missing from the Vietnam War are considered unrecoverable for various reasons, but others, like Echeverria's father, vanished under circumstances that make finding them more likely.
They know where the helicopter landed. They have done interviews with various, I call them NVA soldiers. They identified certain areas where they saw American bodies, so they've got a pretty good idea where they can go and excavate and look for them.
The DPAA says the budget cuts are part of Pentagon-wide reductions, and the effects were worsened by last year's government shutdown and fuel shortages in Southeast Asia tied to the war in Iran. This summer, the agency was placed under the Defense Department's Undersecretary for Personnel and Readiness, Anthony Tata. At a recent meeting, he told Vietnam MIA family members he'll lobby Congress and DoD leaders to get the funding restored.
I'm fully committed to increasing the budget for DPAA because it's a direct correlation for how many teams we can deploy into the field and how much research we can do and how many remains that we can process.
Senator Deb Fischer, a Nebraska Republican, also has introduced a bill to restore $40 million in funding, but its chances of passing are unclear. Ann Mills Griffiths, whose brother, James Mills, went missing in 1966 when his plane went down off the Vietnamese coast, was a longtime leader of the National League of POW MIA Families. A skilled political operator who was close to President Ronald Reagan, she has fought for decades to get more funding for what became the DPAA, but she's long said the agency isn't prioritizing Vietnam cases as much as it should.
It's not at all satisfactory, especially with how hard we've worked and defended and fought for their assets and resources and priorities.
Even before the budget cuts, Vietnam War identifications were a fraction of those completed by the DPAA. The bulk of the agency's recoveries have come from World War II and the Korean War, where missing troops were more numerous and are often easier to find in places like POW cemeteries. But Raymond Echeverria Jr. says Vietnam War recoveries should be prioritized because family members who knew missing troops, like his father, are more likely to be alive.
Our prayer is that we're able to bring them home while we're still here before it goes to the next generation.
So far this year, out of more than 170 service members identified, just one was from the Vietnam War. I'm Jay Price reporting.
This story was produced by the American Homefront Project, a public media collaboration that reports on American military life and veterans. This is NCPR.
You're listening to Northern Light, only here on North Country Public Radio, which is supported by St. Lawrence Nurseries, Potsdam, providing the North Country with cold, hardy fruit and nut trees for over 100 years. slngrow.com. And from Cronin's Golf Resort, a regional destination for golf, dining, and lodging in the southern Adirondacks. Details at croninsgolfresort.com. And from the Glenn and Carol Pearsall Adirondack Foundation, now accepting grant applications from Adirondack not-for-profits until August 31st. Details at pearsallfoundation.org. And, of course, support comes from you when you give right now during our summer fundraiser. Go to ncpr.org/give and please give generously to support this station. Or give us a call at 877-388-6277. Good morning. I'm Monica Sandreski. It's 8:14.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Stick around in just a minute. We'll hear a North Country at Work story and meet the coordinator behind the project. And after that, Bird Note is coming up at 8:42.
In the weather forecast today, we can expect scattered showers really throughout the region today, mostly cloudy too. Highs only expected to reach into the mid-70s with light winds out of the north to northeast today. More unsettled weather and rain is expected to continue tomorrow too, but should be turning around later in the day tomorrow and into the day on Saturday. At last check, it was 66 degrees in Fort Drum, 61 in Saranac Lake, 65 in Plattsburgh, and 17 degrees in Cornwall.
The North Country is made up of the people who play, live, and work here. And all of that makes NCPR what it is. As you heard Monica mention just a moment ago, we're in the middle of our summer fundraiser, and NCPR is now supported almost entirely by the people who use it. We've lost our federal funding. Join in with your friends and neighbors and donate right now at ncpr.org/give or call 877-388-6277.
Nearly every week on Northern Light, we highlight the stories of the region's workers through our North Country at Work project. The series has been around for 10 years now, and this morning we're digging deeper into it. We're joined by North Country at Work's coordinator, Ana Williams-Bergen. Good morning, Ana.
Good morning.
So let's start with this week's story. Tell us what we're about to hear.
So we're about to hear from a man named Fred Provancha in Ticonderoga. He is a wealth of knowledge about Ticonderoga. He grew up there. He actually put together a book about it, and he signed up to come to a public story collection event we held there this summer, which is where he shared the story.
Amazing. So we're about to hear a story. We're talking about making money as a kid, from the summer jobs to create side hustles. Today's North Country at Work story takes a look at the economy of Ticonderoga's teenagers back in the day. Let's take a listen.
In the 1950s and 60s, growing up in Ticonderoga was the opposite of today's helicopter parenting. At least that's how Fred Provancha tells it.
You go out in the morning, you leave, hi mom, maybe she gave you some sandwiches to go with her, maybe not. When it got dark, you came back. What you did in between, you didn't want them to know and they didn't want to know.
Provancha said that the freedom they had was incredible and they used it. But they also had to work for it. As kids, making money was up to them.
If I wanted money, for example, an allowance or something like that, my father would have left for like 6 or 7 minutes and then I'd have left the room.
If you wanted money, Provancha says, you had to get to work. And work he did.
If there was a way to make money legally, morally, whatever, we did it. If there wasn't a way, we invented one. We went into the old abandoned mills, cut out iron and copper and stuff like that, sold it at the local junkyard. We found newspapers, we returned bottles, got an actual job as a newspaper boy.
He also worked as a mop-up boy at a shop called Dorian's downtown. He cut and sold Christmas trees.
Built baseball fields, insulted people in other places so that they would want to play baseball with us, to show us where. And so then we charged money for that.
They built bleachers. They charged a nickel for admission to a game.
My grandchildren don't believe it, but a nickel was actually money. You could go into a store here, get a bag of candy, give them a nickel, and get change.
They had another nickel earning scheme, pigeons.
There were old buildings everywhere, old mine buildings and everything else. So you go into those places and know what you're doing and have permission. And then you capture these poor little baby pigeons just before they can fly and after they've been weaned and stuff.
Provancha and his friends would bring the pigeons home and then teach them to do tricks.
And then go out in the field up back and charge people a nickel to watch you send the pigeon flock out and then call them back and then come back, land on your shoulder, move your shoulder, they go up to your head, move your head, they go down to the other shoulder. They're smarter than I am, so it was easy to do.
He said they'd do whatever they could to make money. Anything legal was fair game.
For part of that time, my father was town judge. So we did not want to get arrested. He's told us all, if you're ever hauled before me, you will never see the light of day again. And, we didn't believe him. We also didn't doubt him.
Provancha says that, while it's hard to pick a favorite job, he's partial to Johnson's apple orchard. He spent a season there as a farmhand, getting to work before the sun came up.
Your legs would be wet up to the knee from the dew and everything. And, you're playing in the trees. You're pruning trees. You're dodging bees. And then when that was all done, then we all went in and picked apples for a while.
Provancha loved his childhood in Ticonderoga, but he left town at 17, didn't move back for decades. So I asked him, if you loved it, why leave? He said he's the fourth Fred Provancha. Everyone called him Sonny just to differentiate from his dad. He wanted to become his own person.
So I said I was Fred Provancha, right? But I wasn't. I was Sonny. Dad ran everything he was involved with, Boy Scout, church group, town. I had no actual existence as a human being once I was home. When I was out in the field, I was me, but I was still Sonny.
So Provancha moved to New York City. He built a life for himself and raised a family, and he worked as a programmer at companies like MasterCard and IBM. By the time he retired and came home to Ticonderoga, he was Fred Provenza, not Sonny. And he still loved Ticonderoga just as much.
Ticonderoga is magic to me. Brigham Young brought a whole bunch of Mormon pioneers out to Utah. He says, this is the place. And for me, this is the place, Ticonderoga. I know this place. I know every blade of grass and every cemetery full of my relatives.
Provenza says that when he looks back on growing up here, it was like heaven. For North Country Public Radio's North Country at Work project, I'm Ana Williams-Bergen in Ticonderoga.
You're listening to Northern Light, only here on North Country Public Radio. And this morning, we're joined by Ana Williams-Bergen, our North Country at Work project coordinator. Ana, we heard from you a little bit earlier to set up that story. And now let's pull back the curtain. How did you get involved with North Country at Work?
So I actually started on this project as an intern. I'm from the North Country. I needed some work experience. And so I started on this project way back in the early days. That was 9 years ago, and I've been around pretty much ever since.
I know we joke that you're one of the youngest staff members here, but you've worked here for 10 years already. So anyway, how the North Country at Work project works. So you host these community events all over the North Country in the summertime, going to museums and libraries for a day, and you collect these interviews from folks in the area, right?
That's it. These amazing librarians, historians that we work with put us in touch with community members that they know we should interview. They're like, oh, you got to talk to this guy. They are huge stars of this project. And then we also put the call out. So you'll hear on the radio, North Country at Work is coming to Ticonderoga or Depauville or wherever it is. And whoever wants to share their work story is welcome. We usually end up with this crazy mix, like different ages, wildly different kinds of work. And then we take these interviews and most of them end up right here on Northern Light.
So we've heard lots of North Country at Work stories over the years, but what makes a good one?
I think there's a couple different ingredients. It kind of depends on the person. The easy one is passion. We talk to so many people who have found what works for them and they love it. It's always wonderful to speak with people who, know they've found their calling, whether it's something, common, like a profession like teaching, or something really niche that they've kind of had a crazy path to discover. I think vulnerability is also a really key part of this project. A lot of times people describe their experiences trying to survive, just piece together a living in this area where it can be really tough to survive economically. It can be a really vulnerable thing to talk about, but it's an experience that so many people here live through, and I think it's really important to reflect that in this project. The last thing I'll touch on is just sharing niche parts of a community's history that we might not know about. I still remember a story I did a couple years back from a community called Tajas, which was this mining town in the really remote Adirondacks. And the whole town was literally picked up and moved when the mining company found a new strike under the workers' housing. You can go to that area today and you basically see grass and trees. But the story behind what used to be there is this fascinating history that was shared with me.
Well, and you just wrapped up the summer series of the North Country at Work events. Where did you go? Who did you meet?
So we went to kind of all corners of the North Country. We went to Depauville in Jefferson County, the Horicon, Brant Lake area in the southern Adirondacks, Champlain right up near the Canadian border, and a couple other places. Lots of long drives, basically. We met some incredible people who demonstrate the diversity and just the creativity of North Country workers. Last week, I interviewed this man from the Southern Adirondacks. He's a stonemason in the summer, and then to provide for his family through the winter, he does all kinds of different things, including selling these custom ice fishing lures that he makes. I also interviewed a postal worker in Ticonderoga. I interviewed the owners of a gym that is themed around the Revolutionary War history in the area. And I could list people off forever, but they're all so fascinating. And you'll hear those stories in the coming months.
Ana, up top, you mentioned that you're from the North Country. How has learning about different careers and communities and paths changed your perspective about the place you grew up?
It has been so interesting throughout my years on this project to go to all of these places that I, as a North Country resident, wouldn't have necessarily been going to some random town 3 hours away with 500 people.
But through the North Country at Work project, I've gotten to just see so many different places, but also talk to so many people and get to know these locations really intimately. It's helped me connect with the North Country beyond my backyard. It's also been awesome to learn more about this region's history, to learn what our economy looked like, in the 1960s, like Fred Provencha was talking about, or 100 or 200 years ago, and to understand how we got to where we are right now in the North Country. It's given me so much context to understand, the local economy and the job market that I experienced growing up here and becoming an adult as well.
And why, you have this whole collection of stories here at NCPR. Why is it important to have these stories and photos about the people who live and work here?
I think there's just so much value in documenting what life used to look like here. We heard Fred Provencha's story, and I wasn't alive in the 1960s. It was so magical for me to get to see through his eyes what that time looked like here. But it's also great to document what life here looks like now. I think about, in 25 or 50 years, being able to listen back and hear from people in their own voices about, maybe someone who was part of the wave of remote workers that moved to the Adirondacks post-COVID, or the young farmers who are helping to grow a sustainable agriculture movement in this region. We've interviewed, postal workers, several EMTs, someone who works at a transfer station this summer. I think we spend so much time hearing what politicians, officials, people in high places have to say. And I really value the opportunity to listen to the people who are working and contributing a lot to these communities, but don't always get the same spotlight. I think the value is hearing from your neighbors, from the librarian who checks out your books to the farmer who grows your food.
And we know that that's important to you, too. Everyone who listens, including myself, give it now to support it. It matters. It's right now, we're wrapping up our summer fundraiser. We're in the last couple of days of it. Give now at ncpr.org/give or call 877-388-6277. We've been speaking with Ana Williams-Bergen, the coordinator for the North Country at Work project here at NCPR. Thanks so much, Ana.
Thanks.
Support for North Country Public Radio comes from the Bookstore Plus in Lake Placid, supplier of books, stationery, art supplies, and more with online shopping available. More at thebookstoreplus.com. And from Brookfield Renewable NA, a provider of clean, renewable, and locally sourced hydropower, reminding listeners to please use caution when recreating near hydroelectric dams as water conditions can change quickly.
That's it for the show. Stick around for news headlines from NPR coming up next.
Northern Light is produced by a wonderful team of people: Kara Chapman, David Escobar, Emily Russell, Richard Haller, Ana Williams-Bergen, our interns Khadija Makaji and Tuana Chiefji, and our news director David Summerstein, who edits the stories you hear on the show, and my co-host Catherine Wheeler.
And my co-host Monica Sandreski. If you miss an episode of Northern Light, never fear. You can listen back to the archive at any place you get your podcasts. And while you're there, subscribe to NCPR's other podcasts too. Get a roundup of the day's news with Story of the Day, personal stories told live by folks in our community on The How, and features and interviews about life in the North Country in Northwards.
You can also keep up with NCPR throughout the day on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook. And shoot the news team an email, news@ncpr.org. Theme music is by Danny Thomas of Canton. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Catherine Wheeler. Be well.